Hi, this is Roy S. Johnson from AL.com, and welcome to our offices. This is Alabama House Minority Leader Anthony Daniels from Huntsville. Welcome to AL.com.
Thank you, Roy.
So I want to start by asking, you used to be an elementary school teacher, right? So who's harder to wrangle, a room full of 10-year-olds or your colleagues on the House?
Well, I would say that some would say that the third graders will be insulted if I compare it. But I would say, all in all, working with my colleagues in the legislature has been a joy. I really enjoyed it thus far, and will continue to enjoy it. And you guys will be the first to know if I get to a point to where I'm not enjoying it.
Well, that's what they always say, we'll be the first to know. But we'll always try to be the first to know. Now, you also own a dentist practice. Do you still do that, or is that something in your background?
My wife is a dentist, and so my company, we manage the day-to-day operation, the business operations for the dental practice, so that she's able to really continue to focus on perfecting her craft, and so that we're dealing with all of the other headaches that comes with owning or running a small business.
All right, let's talk about what's going on in Montgomery, particularly with Democrats. A lot of momentum after Doug Jones' win last year. Have you seen any of that residual effect in Montgomery? Are the Democrats excited about being Democrats in Alabama again?
I think Democrats, for the most part, they've always been excited. It's just that I think that now we've gotten to a point to where we've gotten to know each other, and we're still getting to know each other. But for the most part, we've developed a plan and a path forward. Oftentimes when you're used to being in the majority, it's very difficult to operate in the minority. And I think that both parties actually, somewhat are in a very different position than they've typically been in previous years. Democrats traditionally have not learned how to play from behind, and Republicans traditionally have not figured out how to govern. And so I think that there's a balance right now. I think for the most part, Democrats are extremely excited right now after the win of Senator Jones. But I think for me, for the most part, it's about seeing both Senator Jones and Shelby working together on behalf of Alabama, putting politics aside and focusing on behalf of the citizens of Alabama. And I think that is something that has to be reflective in the legislature. And I think we're beginning to see some of that.
You announced recently the Democratic agenda for this legislative session, and you called it clean, competent, and competitive. Let's start with clean. It's not a word you hear too often in the same sense with Alabama politics.
Well, I think, one of the things that we've suffered from that plagued this state in the last few years is we've really compromised public trust. And so for us, whether it's Democrat or Republican, caught up in some type of scandal or something that is not indicative of how they should act or the proper decorum, then we believe that that our constituents elected us and sent us to Montgomery and for a reason, and that is to make certain that we are really advocating the ideas and leading by example. And so when we talk about clean, we talk about ending corruption. We talk about making certain that cronyism is not something that's really taken over Montgomery, and something that we're getting away from. And when you talk about fair and equitable elections and things of that nature, I think that kind of defines the clean portion of our agenda. And it's not pointing at anyone. It's not taking a shot at Republicans. It's the process, and it's that people want leaders that they can believe in and that they can trust.
And that rolls right into competent. I'm sure you're talking about leadership, but also just throughout the state in terms of elevating the workforce and creating a more competent state, just in terms of being able to attract businesses.
Yeah, what I've seen as someone that's fairly new to the legislature, and now I can't claim to be new any longer, but for me, it's putting forth policies that actually have positive outcomes, and putting politics to the side. Being competent is to make certain that we're finding solutions to the problems that exist and that plague our state. Identifying ways to to push economic development into rural communities with double-digit unemployment rates that makes sense for that community. You have Champion in Cortland, Alabama, for example. Our recruitment strategy should have been recruiting an industry that was probably a 14, maybe 10 to 15 years away from full automation. So if that industry was recruited into Cortland, Alabama, then you're able to hire the displaced workers that lost their jobs as a result of the closing of that paper plant, right? And so then you have an opportunity to integrate into the curriculum, the K-12 curriculum, more robotics programs, so that as we move forward and that company move toward full automation, you'll have a trained workforce to fill those jobs as well, so that individuals that are displaced are retiring with dignity and their community is continuing to be strong. And then you have that new workforce that you're training for those jobs within the next 10 to 15 years. And so that's what I'm saying. We got to be more competent and intentional about how we solve Alabama problems. We can't just say no to everything and say that it costs too much. We have to consider things as being an investment. And the returns, it yields really positive returns. And so when I talk about competent, it's finding solutions to the problems that exist.
And the last C is really competitive. Now, so much of that, whether it's the state or the city, relies on education. We can't be a competitive state if we continue to have failing school systems.
Absolutely.
And we've, of course, seen the report cards lately that delineate that. So what do you say about education, and what are some of the bills that the Democrats are looking about putting in place to try to attack
And so
that?
when we talk about competitive, we're talking about two things. And you cannot be successful at one without the other. We're talking about education as well as economic development and workforce. Education-wise, if we know that third grade test scores are right now one of the major indicators of whether or not a child is going to be successful throughout life, right? Why don't we focus on that 0 to 4-year-old period? Right now, Alabama is well known for its very successful and robust pre-K programs, and that's idolized around the country. But let's take it a step further. Let's wrap our arms around those kids once they leave the womb, birth to pre-K. And so once you focus on and really cultivating the relationships early on and exposing these young kids to the curriculum, then when they get to pre-K and when they get to kindergarten through third grade, the test scores will be way above average, and that likelihood of that child being able to be successful is more likely. And then we're able to turn the page and increase the rigor of the curriculum because our children are school ready and they're very prepared. And we're not just competing with Mississippi or domestically, we're competing globally. And so that's kind of what I see as a solution on the preventative side, meaning we're addressing the chronic problem.
Are there bills, specific bills that are designed to address that from the Democrats, or maybe bipartisan
There's
bills?
going to be, what we're looking at now is doing a pilot, proposing to do a pilot in our local community to make certain that we're assessing the progress of this. I know I'm very confident that it will work, but oftentimes we want to see some evidence-based things, and I have no problem with that. That's something that I welcome as well. The other thing is highly qualified and certified teachers in classrooms across the state of Alabama. Many of our rural areas it's really tough for them to attract really highly qualified or highly qualified teachers that are proven that to come into their area. There is not a lot of incentives to lure them to those areas that are not growing. And so I have a nephew, a cousin, that scored like a 28 on the ACT, but he had like a 17 or 18 in math. Well, I often question that and trying to figure out why is it that his math scores are so low. It is because he had, for a period of time, he had like a substitute teacher teaching high school math. And so we got to make certain that we are having these certified teachers in these particular areas, because that where he graduated from is a very hard to staff area. And so we got to focus more of our attention there. But on the preventative side, we have to provide opportunities to invest in our best and brightest to go into the education feel and commit themselves to going back into those areas and working. And if we're providing them some type of loan forgiveness, we have to do that because that's an investment. And so those are some of the things that I believe, or we believe, will really make us successful as a state and to move our state forward.
Let's jump back and talk about the Democratic Party, particularly going forward. Leadership, Nancy Worley, Joe Reed, what do you see for their future in terms of leadership for the Democratic Party?
Well, for me, I've always been more of a local guy. I believe that in order to build infrastructure, you must start in your local community. Oftentimes you hear different politicians around the state that may gripe about having leadership at the state level, but my question to them is, when have you ever had a strong Democratic Party? I don't know that anyone can tell me a time that there was a very strong Democratic Party. Oftentimes the Democratic Party has been a place where you sign up to run for office. I don't see the leadership at the Democratic Party at the state level being as impactful as the local Democratic Party.
They don't feed off each other. Don't you need a strong state party in order to
you do need a strong state party, but there've always been an absence of that. So you have to build non-traditional infrastructure outside of the state party and get organizations and people that are like-minded, that are very passionate. You have to organize those in that manner. We can't depend on whether it's in government, federal government, to take care of all of our problems. We got to take some ownership and really focus in our local communities. Yes, we do need a strong state party, but have we ever had one? No. Okay. And so it's really, instead of focusing on taking shots at the leadership or at the state level, let's focus on our local communities, because I think those things will work themselves out in due time. And I just want us to channel our attention on the issues and organizing in our local communities.
So speaking of local communities and elections, it seems like just about everybody in the state is up for election in 2018. Absolutely. Again, coming off Senator Jones's win, prospects for 2018, what do you see for the Democratic Party this year in terms of all these elections, particularly the gubernatorial race? Do you see there's a potential chance there for a Democrat to be the next governor of the state?
Absolutely. I think that what has to happen is Democrats have traditionally, in the last decade, have tried to play a lot of defense or run to the right of their Republican opponent. Right now, Democrats have to lay out a plan and a path forward, a path for Alabama. And what will their path for Alabama be? And really focusing on issues that impact lives, staying away from issues that are divisive. One of the issues that we always hear come up in every election cycle is the abortion issue. Well, for me, my question to anyone that will question one's stance on that particular issue, okay, what about, to be pro-life is to take care of the child once they're born, is to make certain that they have adequate health care, is to make certain that they have a quality education system. And so if in fact you're voting against policies that help the child once they're born, how can you say that you're pro-life? And so I would consider that person as being pro-birth. And so having those type of conversations, okay, instead of having the conversations about what should and using these type of issues, what are we doing to reduce the number of unwanted abortions? What are we doing to do that? Have there been a plan? So don't tell me what you're for or against. Show me or tell me how you're going to provide a solution to those particular problems, how we're going to address those issues. And so the days of using those issues are over. And so come up with some solutions. Let's work on some solutions to take care of the actual problem instead of using fear and invoking fear into the electorate. Okay. And that's not going to work anymore. Well,
this legislative session ends in March, and then it seems like the real games begin in the state, not just for the Democrats, but for the citizens of Alabama. So hopefully we'll see you again. Welcome to coming to, thank you for coming to AL.com.
Thank you, Roy.